Hi, welcome to part 3 of our template overview. In this video, we're going to focus exclusively on the mixer. All right, okay. So, we're in the mixer session. As I told you guys at the beginning, I'm actually rocking a 3-monitor system, but right now I'm using 2 monitors for my DaVinci setup. So my mixer has been available the whole time. It's just been on another monitor. So now we've switched over to that other monitor, and I'm gonna delve into how the routing works. And this is going to give you guys more of a true, honest understanding of how everything is laid out. Okay. So one of the things that we're gonna do here first, as we talk about how this is laid out, is also get into the plugins used and what I'm suggesting. What I usually use is plugins, and then what I'm suggesting you guys do. It's just starting out, especially if you're building this on your own. Okay, so we're going to start here. Go top down. Okay, so we're over here in our DX1 track. Okay. And the very first thing we're going to talk about is the plugins. So you've got the amazing dialogue leveler and voice isolation that comes with, and your track effects that comes with DaVinci. Okay, and right off the bat, I'm gonna tell you guys right now, the majority of the time you want to stick with the plugins that come with DaVinci. Okay, now is that something that I do? No. Okay, because I like for reverb here, I'm typically using another set of reverbs that are VST reverbs. Okay, I'm not typically somebody who's going to use the reverbs that come with DaVinci. Okay, and as you guys can see here, I've got a kind of a list of reverbs. Okay, I typically use Cinematic Room. Okay, Cinematic Room's professional, and that's what I typically use. Okay, now here's the issue, and as I said before, there are some performance hits, and there's some times with some plugins where they can absolutely bring your production to a crawl, because for whatever reason, the VST plugins and Resolve don't, sometimes they don't speak really well to each other. So what I would strongly suggest is that you test out the plugins that you want to use and test them out in DaVinci, and make sure that your performance hit, you're not hitting a performance wall with those plugins. Okay, and if there's any reason why I would tell people that right now I would stick to doing my major projects in Nuendo or in Pro Tools, this is one of the number one reasons right here, is that there's not an embrace between, and not a healthy handshake between Resolve and the plugins. Okay, now are there some good plugins for, like I said, if you're doing something and it's a quick and dirty, or you're doing something and the expectations of the sound and audio are not as high as it would be if you were, say, delivering it to Netflix? Would I use the FAIRLIGHT? I have. Okay, so no knock on those plugins. I think they're good plugins. They can get the job done. You just, if you're in love with, like I'm in love with certain other plugins, then it's really hard for me to use anybody else's plugin. Okay. So here's my plugins. Typically, what I do is I've got some reverb and delay that are put on the tracks and stuff, but then there are also sends that go out. Okay, so it depends on whether I think I need to do a tremendous amount of reverb and delay. Then they're going to be sent to, through the bus sends, they're going to be sent to those tracks, my reverb and delay tracks. Okay, they're going to be ported over there to those. If it's just something minor and I just need to slap it on there, 30-second spot, whatever, and stuff like that, then I'll do it here. Okay, so those get activated if I need to do, do it that way. Now, I have a video, and you guys can see it up here. There's a video I've done on the dialogue chain that I usually use. That dialogue chain kind of stays consistent no matter what I'm doing and what products I use. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether I'm using the window or I'm using DaVinci or even Audition or something like that. I'm going to stay with my normal processing chain, all right, which is noise reduction, EQ in the voice. I'll slap a little soothe on there to make it right, a little de-esser, and then finally some compression. Okay, so typically that's the way I get down. Now, what you will find with DaVinci is that they do have some of that stuff wrapped up in your dynamics chain, and then there's an EQ chain. Okay, so my dynamics chain has some of that compression and limiter already put inside of it, and I'll use that as a cheat sometimes for not putting in that entire chain, because like I said, I've had experiences with Resolve where I've done my chain and it slowed everything down to a crawl. Okay, now I put my EQ in here. Always, I just go with a high, like the high cut, low cut, pass, and start off with that. Now that's not my EQing my voice. That's just across the board I put on every single dialogue track to take out the unwanted frequencies. Okay, so that's not EQing the voice. EQing the voice, typically I use something where I can kind of EQ the voice all the way through. So, and for me, that's Pro Q3. I kind of stand on that. So this allows me to be able to kind of go in and EQ the voice in different places, pull it up, pull it down, depending on, what I'm seeing here as far as the frequencies. Okay, so that's usually what I use. Now there is a way to do that with the EQs in DaVinci, though you won't be able to see. You'll have to use the frequency analyzer to actually see the print of the voice, and then just kind of go in and eyeball it in your actual EQ program. Okay, so there's a way to do that. Just you won't be able to see the graphical representation of it, but you can do it. Okay, so like I said, we start off with our plugins. Here's the reason why you use the plugins from DaVinci. Last but not least, put limiters on all of the buses. So all of my buses have limiters on there. Okay. Now, real important, I use the limiter, the effects limiter, not the dynamics limiter, not the limiter that's included with the dynamics package. Why? The limiter, the FX, the FAIRLIGHT FX limiter is a true peak limiter. Okay, whereas the dynamics limiter is not. Okay, you're going to get some pass through, and you don't want to trust it as a true kind of brick wall, true peak limiter. Okay, all right. So once again, I kind of use that one. I kind of use this one. On my buses, I go minus 1.8. For my main outs, I'll go minus 2.3. Okay, 2.3 gives me a little bit of safety for Netflix. Okay, so the 2.3 is where I go on the main outs. The buses, I kind of stick around 1.8. Give itself a little bit room. My release is around 70. Whatever's good for you. Now, what I wouldn't do is turn on that soft. I haven't experienced it, but I know some people. I saw some people in some comments that were kind of expressing their some nightmare scenarios with it softening up the whatever came at it. It softened it up a little bit. I wouldn't use it, but to each his own. Okay, go out, experiment, take a look at it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Okay, all right. So that's it. That's it for plugins. All right. an EQ. So now one of the things we want to talk about is panning. Okay. So like I said, we're working from top down. Okay. Now, the panner in the mono tracks, okay, it's pretty standard stuff. All right. It's pretty standard stuff. You get to move this around, and that's going to move your sound field around. So it's pretty standard stuff. If you've seen familiar at all with any kind of surround panning, this is what you get. Okay. Now, the one thing I want to call in for you guys is the boom down at the bottom. Now, that is how you activate your LFE. I know it's kind of funky, a little weird, but this is how they doing it. You can turn on your boom, that turns on your LFE, okay? And then this is the amount. This is your fader LFE. So this will be kind of like what your signal is going to be as far as I'm assuming decibels. And then you can do it pre-fader, which actually is pretty cool. So if you're sending something to that track, and you don't want it, you don't want to affect it by the actual fader that's in the track, then you set pre, and it'll, whatever's coming in, and it'll do it without being affected by that fader. This is why I have a separate LFE channel. Okay, this is why I have a separate track all to itself, because what I don't want to do is have a bunch of normal program stuff coming in here, and then I'm trying to balance between how much do I give the boom versus whether I have to ride the fader on that actual track, because there's actual program stuff on there that's non-LFE. For example, if you start riding that fader and then you've got your boom set at one particular place for, like, say, minus 13, minus whatever, well, you take that fader up without the pre, you're actually now adding to that boom. Okay, so that's why I have a separate track, because then in the separate track, all I have to do is worry about this fader here. I don't have to worry about the other fader. Okay, and that's just the way I do it. Okay, all right. So we talked about our fader as far as mono. Now, when we get into, let's say, a 5.1 fader, then it's going to give you a little bit better experience. So here's our 5.1 fader. Okay, same look, but just remember that there's 5 channels here. Okay, so you're gonna get 5 channels of operation that you're actually working on instead of just that one. You're not moving around one track. You're moving around 5 tracks. Okay. Now here's a little another nit about FAIRLIGHT, okay, and I don't want to say this as it's a deal changer or anything like that. It's just something you need to know. Okay, currently right now you cannot there's no panner for the buses. So for instance, I've got my chain 2. Now my chain 2 here, okay, you guys can see it. My chain 2 is where I'm going to do a lot of my submixing of where I'd like to do a lot of submixing of my dialogue. Okay, so say for instance I'm doing a documentary, dipped and undipped, right? And I have to deliver that dipped and undipped stems. Well, that means I don't really want to do a lot of mixing on these dialogue tracks here. I don't really want to go start moving faders up and down on those dialogue tracks, because I've got to give a dipped and undipped version. Now, what does dip and undip mean? Well, dipped means I'm going to give you a stem that has all the fader operations that I did on the show. So if I'm going up and down, or I'm fading down because I've got music coming up, I'm fading voices down, or I'm fading somebody's voice up. Well, that's dipped. Undipped means, I've EQ'd, I've done all my EQs, I've did my clip gains, all my voices are level and nice and everything like that. And that's what I'm going to give you as far as undipped. I'm not going to give you the version where I'm riding the fader and turning up and down their voices on a program level, on a track level. I'm not going to give you that. I'm just going to give you all the voices laid out, and then that would be given to somebody, and they could fade it up and down for their own, for their own benefit. Okay. So a lot of times in documentaries, that's what you ask for. I know, like on the Netflix spec sheet that you get, that's typically a no-brainer. You got to give them, like for documentaries, you got to get them dipped and undipped. Okay. Now, I didn't do undipped buses here and undipped stems here. You can add that if you need it. Okay. I did give you dipped, and I marked where which buses are dipped and where you could deviate from that. So let's say dialogue chain 2 or dialogue chain 1 and dialogue chain 2 are dipped. Okay. So what that means is that, I could go in, and if I wanted to, I should be able to do a pan. I should be able to pan right here. Okay. Normally in the window, I would pan this track. This track would have panned information on it also, because I'm doing my mixing here. I'm doing my track level mixing here. So I'd want to do my panning here too. That way, those tracks, my dialogue tracks, my DX tracks are not panned at all. They don't have pan information on it. The only track that has the pan information at the track level is that chain. Now in Resolve, I can't do that. Okay. So, just something for you to know. This, I don't know if it makes your life harder. Now, you may not want to pan a dialogue track, so this example might be a little foolish, but let's say you're doing your music or your special effects or something, it still holds. I can't pan my special effects at the bus level. Okay. I've got to pan them at each individual track. Okay. Or I could route that to a track and pan it there, and that might be a possible, like I've done that too, where I've actually set up an extra track and then sent everything to that extra track. And then that's where I did all my dip on, and then sent that track to my chain. Okay. Or my submix. So I've done that in Resolve. It worked out pretty good. Just not a user workflow, because like I said, in the window of Pro Tools, you don't do that. You don't have to do that. Okay. But just something for you to know. And, there it is. Do what you want with it. Okay. So moving on. All right. Now, we've done our pans. Let's talk about our bus sends. Okay. So we're moved down a little bit here. So as you guys can see, okay, now we're over in our Foley, right? So let's deal with our special effects and our Foley. Okay. So we're in our effects and Foley part of the layout. And as you guys can see, every track has the same identical sends. They're all sending to that the room reverb, to our room reverb, our automobile, our exteriors, our interiors, all our reverbs, and our 2 delays. Every one of them are being sent to the same place. Okay. And you can turn them on. Basically, you go here, click that little red button. You're going to click a little button here, and that's going to actually activate all your sends. So you can turn them off here and turn them back on if you need them. Okay. Now, the additional thing is all this can be automated, which is sweet, right? So all of these sends can be automated. You can control them through your automation, and that makes life really, 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 really cool. So in theory, you can have all of these things activated over here and then turn them off for your sends. Okay. Turn them off through your sends and through your send to automation. All right. And we're not going to get into automation here. Maybe we will. So if you guys, drop me a line down in the comments if you guys want to see something about automation in DaVinci FAIRLIGHT. I'll be more than happy to give you guys a session on that. But for right now, we're just going to keep talking about the template. And like I said, if you guys have any comments or any questions, leave them down in the comments, and by, you guys know the deal. Like and subscribe, smash the notification button, all that cool stuff. So I know you guys love me and my long-winded talks here, but we're learning stuff. We're learning. So we're learning by doing. Here we go. All right. So we've done our bus sends, right? We've done our panning, we've done our EQs and our plugins. So we're at a point where now we're talking about our bus outputs, okay? Now the cool thing about DaVinci is it does allow you to send out multiple bus outputs. So as you can see here, I came down, I'm clicking the little plus sign, and that's going to give me a list of all my buses. All right. Now, here's the problem. One of the problems is that these are my bus outputs. These are bus sends. Okay. These are bus sends and these are bus outputs. You're restricted through these two workflows to only send to buses. So remember, as we just said a second ago, you can't pan your buses. You don't have a panner for your buses. So if you don't have a panner for your buses, then that hurts because your bus sends and your bus outputs can only go to buses. All right. So there's some workarounds you have to do to actually send a track to a track. Okay. Feed a track to a track and be able to work that way. And that's why I told you guys about the inconvenience of not being able to pan the buses, because there's some tough workarounds you have to do in order to get everything to go to your tracks, and then pan those. All right. Okay. So here's your bus sends. Like I said, you have a ton of stuff. Now, here's my typical setup that I'm doing for this template. Okay. So this template, let's take our Foley here as an example. So we've got our Foley, and here's our 4 Foley tracks. Okay. Our 4 Foley tracks are being sent to a Foley sub. Okay. And that's where I'm going to do my track. All my track operations are going to be done on this dipped sub mix. All right. So as you guys can see here, all these here are actually headed over to, okay, and you can see them in my bus sends. Okay. All these are headed to my Foley sub. And then my Foley sub is sent to both my 5.1 print master and my stereo print master. Okay. So here's my 5.1 print master. Here's my stereo print master. Okay. And you can see by the color coding here, I've got which ones are 5.1. This is both of these are 5.1. They got orange color coding, and my stereos, just as you can see here, you can see over here and here, my stereo print masters are yellow. Okay, so color coding, these tell me that these are stereo. The orange ones tell me that they're 5.1, and they're all print masters. Okay, they're all buses. It can be used as outputs for stems. So here we go. So both of these, okay, this is my 5.1 print master, which is being fed by my sub, which then is being fed by my regular tracks. And this is repeated throughout every single module, whether it's dialogue, music, effects, BGs, whatever. It goes regular tracks to a sub mix, from the sub mix to my print masters, and then the print masters are sent to my master outs. So as you can see here, my print master is then going to be sent to my print master is going to be sent to my 5.1 master, okay, and then my 5.1 M&E print master, okay. So because Foley and effects and music can often be asked for as an M&E print master. Now that's all dipped because it's coming from this dipped sub. Now, if they ask me for that undipped, then I would have to create another bus. I would create an undipped bus that would also so I would add that particular bus here. So you get my Foley sub dipped, and then a Foley subbed undipped, and that would sit right next to this one. So the routing is insanely simple. Okay, the ability to be able to route. Now, I will say this, and FAIRLIGHT also gives you a good understanding of how to route things. If you go up to FAIRLIGHT and then go to patch input output, you'll see that they have a huge amount of different buses. Like this is the bus out, and then this right here can tell you like what's heading to what. Okay, so these are all my bus outs, and I can actually make connections here. I can patch and unpatch through this thing, and I'll show you guys how that's done in a second and why it's important. Okay, but you should be able to handle everything here. Okay, and get your routing. So remember, regular tracks, these are mono tracks being fed to a 5.1 submix, and then that submix is being fed to a print master mix. Okay, and then the print master mix is being fed to our main mix. Okay, which you guys can see all the way over here. These are our main outs, and they're all being fed. Every one of them are being fed by these print masters, by my print master. We're at a point where we're going to talk about our outputs, and that would be over here. All right, so as I said, all of our outputs are being fed by our print masters, okay? The print masters are going to allow you to be able to print out stems, okay? So just a dialogue, or just the music, or just the background, sync background, or just your backgrounds, so on and so forth. So you would print those backgrounds, you print those print masters, or deliver those print masters if you're asked for them. Okay, and they're delivered as mono. They're generally delivered as mono wave files. Okay, so that's really important. Most typically they're delivered as a wave file. Okay, and a mono wave file. So you would have a left track, right track, left track. If you delivered a stereo, you'd have a left channel and a right channel mono files. Not a combined file that's stereo. Let's be really, really clear about that. You do not deliver stems that are what's called interleaved. So you wouldn't have one file that has a left and right channel inside of it. You wouldn't deliver that. You would deliver single wave files. Okay, so for instance, if somebody told you to deliver a surround sound 5.1 stem of your let's say a music, and it's 5.1, you're going to deliver them 6 tracks. They're going to be 6 individual files. Left is one file, right is one file, center is one file, so on and so forth. Okay, you guys get that? All right. All the print masters and all of the outputs are all designed for you to be able to kind of deliver those different pieces if called upon. Okay, and you'll get that from whatever distributor, whatever broadcaster you're dealing with should have what's called a spec sheet. You should request it, and it should have how they want everything laid out. Okay, now why am I talking to you guys about that? Because that bolds into the flexibility of the output. So I've got my outputs, and as you can see, now, how do I determine what's in this bank here, this panel that's not moving, which is my output panel? How do I determine that? Well, really, really quick. That one way you can determine that is by being over in your track list. So as you see in your track list, when you create a bus, that bus is going to be put inside of this panel automatically. Automatically, it's going to be grouped with these mess of outputs. Now, if you move it past it passed the last track here. So these are our tone tracks. If I take a bus that I created and then I sit it over like left of this tone track or above this tone track in my track list, it's going to ungroup it from this panel. Okay, so it's not going to show up in this panel. Okay, it's going to show up now in our regular panel that goes with all of our regular tracks. Okay, and that's a cool, nifty thing that Resolve does. The window does it differently. You have a little bit more control. You have a lot more control as far as how you can group the tracks and where you can have them show up. But Resolve handles that, I would say, pretty well. And I would say this right now, way better than, like, say, Audition, which would be its competitor in this, like 10 times better than Audition alone. And that bodes back to what I'm saying. As far as the class of software that we're dealing with here as compared to Audition and Resolve, FAIRLIGHT Resolve is killing it versus Audition. Okay, there's still a couple things as far as performance wise, because VST plugins, all of my VST plugins work like ridiculously well inside of Audition. So I would say, as far as the ability to work with VST plugins, Audition has still got Resolve beat. But when it comes to actual layout, look, feel, the ability to mimic a real DAW, FAIRLIGHT is getting there. It's not there all the way, but it's getting there. So we've done that. We've got this stuff together. This is normal output stuff. You got the M&E tracks. I got a 5.1 M&E, a stereo M&E, stereo master out, so on and so forth. Okay, now, one important thing. I included here a webmaster out. Okay, now that webmaster out is what I've tried to do is use my stereo out signal, and I'm going to send that stereo out signal through my bus output to my web output signal, and then I'm going to boost the gain on it. Okay, now I'm using a boosted gain through my peak limiter. Actually, yeah, I think that took it off. I actually wanted to use a boosted gain through my compressor. Okay, so let's go dynamics. All right, multi-band compressor. Okay, so I'm using a boosted gain through the multi-band compressor, and all I'm doing here is just kind of, gaining that up. Okay. And that's how I'm achieving that minus 18 or minus 14. Okay. Now, there's multiple different ways that you can do that. You can boost your gain, whatever you feel happy doing. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to cut these bands off. Okay. All right. Now, the reason I use the multi-band compressor is you may want to, you might want to set something so you don't go too far over, just in case you're going to take it all the way up to in that minus 14 range. Because if you go too hot, then say YouTube is going to compress it. They're going to slap compression on you if you go hotter than that minus 14. Okay, so you can play with that minus 14, but you really don't want to end up down to minus 8 or something, because YouTube's just going to compress it. Okay, now consequently, and as you guys, anybody who listens to my channel, you guys find out on my channel, I don't I'll go lower, down minus 23 or something like that. YouTube is not going to boost your stuff. They ain't going to boost your stuff. Your stuff is going to end up kind of staying where it's at. But if you go too hot, they will compress it. All right, so that's something to take into mind. That's why I use the compressor, but that's how I usually boost up my signal. Okay, and as I've just really started finishing in Resolve for YouTube, that's going forward that I'm going to use. Okay, so I got my limiter on here. Actually, I probably want to switch these around. I want to go my dynamics first, and then my limiter second. Okay, so that's definitely something you want to kind of keep in mind. All right, so I'm going to drag that down here. All right, well, we're going to switch it. Okay, now last but not least, we need to deal with how you, like how you kind of activate your outs and your ins. Okay, so we're going to switch back up to our first screen here, and we're going to deal with that in a second.